Retired lawyers inspiring 800K victory. Shocking cop harassment exposed during yard work. Harold Jennings stood in the sun-drenched tranquility of his Santa Fe garden, the sounds of rustling leaves and chirping birds his only audience. At 68, life had shifted for him. The bustling courtrooms and the adrenaline of legal battles were memories now, replaced by the mundane cadence of gardening. Yet with each rake of leaves he felt the creeping shadows of loneliness close in. A man once regarded as a force of reason and justice was now in his own small world invisible. The quiet hum of retirement enveloped him, warm but suffocating. His hands tightened around the wooden rake as he surveyed the swathes of fallen foliage, yet an unsettling feeling gnawed at his gut. He wasn't just battling leaves today, he was wrestling with the fact that he felt forgotten. He had dedicated his life to fighting against injustice, advocating for the voiceless, yet here he was, a mere shadow in a neighborhood that had once celebrated him. Suddenly his peace shattered. A squad car screeched to a halt in front of his house, lights flashing. He squinted through the glare as two young officers emerged, their expressions grave, the stark contrast of their uniforms against the pastel facades of the neighborhood sending his heart racing. "Sir, we need to ask you a few questions," one officer barked, her voice filled with authority. Harold's mind raced. He was a respected lawyer, and yet, something in the air felt wrong. He stood frozen, hands still gripping the rake as they accused him of suspicious behavior. A mind once sharp with legal arguments fumbled for appropriate words, panic setting in. He stuttered, unable to comprehend how yard work had suddenly morphed into an interrogation. Doubt swirled within him. Was he simply an old man tending to his garden, or a figure suspect in a community marked by fear? Before this escalated further, memories of courtroom confrontations surged through him. Cross-examination tactics, the pressure of the gavel's sound echoing decisions that changed lives. He felt the muscles in his jaw tense, his throat dry as he attempted to explain who he was. Would they even believe him? With every breath, the sense of humiliation grew, leaving him feeling like a perpetrator in his own life. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The officers scoffed at his position, the condescension cutting deeper than the words themselves. Anger twisted in Harold's stomach, but so did a profound sense of despair. How had he become this? He turned back to the garden, wishing it could shield him, but it was no refuge. Just then a flash of movement caught his eye. Jamie, his daughter walking her dog, paused at the edge of the sidewalk, horror etched on her face. They hadn't spoken in years. The gaps between them now loomed impossibly wide, filled with unresolved hurt and resentment. Yet as she took a step closer, determination sparked in Harold. Could he reach across that chasm? Or was this yet another division forced by circumstances beyond their control? The tension mounted within, like a background music swelling to a crescendo. The air crackled with unasked questions as Jamie picked up her phone, documenting the encounter. Unbeknownst to Harold, this single moment could ignite a wildfire of revelations, one that might tear them apart or somehow bring them back together. His mind raced. What was the price of defending his dignity now when everything felt so fragile? Harold's heart pounded as Jamie approached, every step echoing like a gavel striking a verdict. The officers glanced at her, their authority slightly undermined by the unexpected audience. Would she stand by him, or would she see him as the man he feared he was becoming? A man without a voice. "Dad, what's going on?" Jamie's voice was steady, but beneath it lay a layer of confusion. Harold searched her eyes, trying to gauge where they stood after years of silence. Would she recognize him as the father she had once admired, or as the estranged figure her memory had perhaps tarnished? Just doing some yard work, officer," he managed to utter, though the words felt inadequate, like a defense poorly constructed. His gaze shifted between Jamie and the officers, feeling the tension knotting tighter. Doing yard work while being reported for suspicious activity? Interesting choice. The second officer replied, arms crossed as if he were in a courtroom, ready to discredit a witness. Harold suppressed the urge to toss the rake aside and recompose his stance as a lawyer. The temptation to argue to defend his existence simmered just below the surface. "Look, I don't want any trouble," he said rather meekly. The years had stripped him of the audacious spirit that once thrived on confrontation. He felt that simmer, a lawyer, once in command, now reduced to evasion. "I believe you," Jamie interjected, stepping boldly forward. "You can't just hassle him because he's old and in his own yard." The passion in her voice had an unexpected weight, pulling Harold out of his paralysis. Each word became a reminder of the advocate he used to be. He felt an ember of resolve spark within him, simmering to life as the memory of courtroom battles blurred into the present conflict. The officers exchanged glances, doubt flickering in their posture. Something crucial shifted. Harold realized he couldn't let this moment define him. "Listen," he said, emboldened. "I'm an attorney. Or at least I was. I stood against the weight of systemic issues and fought for what was right. You need to understand, I won't accept being disrespected in my own yard." The first officer stepped forward, her posture reflecting a challenge. "Prove it. Step up and show us you're not just some crazy old man." A rush of adrenaline surged through him. In that moment he had to decide: remain a passive victim, or reclaim a shard of his once formidable identity. "I will prove it. But not to you. I'll show my daughter who I really am." Jamie's reaction was immediate. A mixture of surprise and pride lit her features. With newfound clarity, Harold motioned towards the garden shed. "Let's make this a learning experience. It's time to teach you about the law, a father's responsibility to share knowledge." The officers shifted uncomfortably. They had expected compliance, not this unexpected display of defiance. Harold felt the adrenaline spike, straightforward thoughts rushing through his mind. As he strode toward the shed, determination propelled his every step. Sorting through tools, sharp motions revealed memories of rights and wrongs, battles fought, and principles upheld. He uncapped an old paint can and started marking a delineation in the garden. "This is where I stand." In that act, Harold wasn't just reclaiming space. He was unfurling a shield, a reminder to himself and Jamie of the man he'd always been. With paintbrush in hand, he turned back, facing not just the officers but the reality of his life. "If they don't see me, I'll make sure they will." The air, once thick with confrontation, now vibrated with possibilities. This confrontation might not just end here. Perhaps it was a prelude to something larger, a redemption arc he was ready to explore, outside the boundaries of his once familiar life, where twisted narratives served to isolate him. He sensed a flicker of a new beginning. The battle for his dignity was only just starting. And as the officers contemplated their next move, Harold pondered another daunting truth. Would Jamie support his resurgence, or would she pull away, leaving him in obscurity yet again? The moment hovered, each heartbeat a reflection of what was to come, teetering on the brink of revelation. As the paintbrush brushed against the weathered boards of the fence, Harold felt each sweep resonate through him, anchoring him to the present. The officers stood stiffly, skepticism etched across their faces, but within Harold's chest, an unfamiliar warmth began to suffuse his frigid resolve. He was no longer merely an old man caught off guard. He was a father re-establishing his place in the world. "Do you think this is appropriate?" one of the officers asked, disrupting his thoughts. The words held a sharp edge, hinting at their disbelief regarding his transformation. Harold paused, paintbrush hovering in midair. He refused to shrink back now. "Appropriate? That's exactly the point," he replied, his voice stronger than he expected. "Appropriate is understanding context. You see a man in a yard but fail to recognize a history of fighting for rights. This is not a spectacle, it's a lesson in recognizing dignity." Jamie's eyes widened, watching her father shed layers of uncertainty. There was a flicker of surprise mingled with pride. and for the first time in years Harold felt he had an audience. He wasn't merely battling oblivion in his own yard. He was teaching Jamie about voice, clarity, and the importance of standing firm against disrespect. He turned to her. "You'll need to understand this someday. Advocacy isn't just in a courtroom, it's about your daily interactions, how you stand up for yourself and others. Law isn't only rules, it's about justice and dignity, something these officers seem to forget." The younger officer glanced sideways at his partner, uncertainty creeping into his demeanor. He had likely expected Harold to crumble under pressure, yet here he was, painting a boundary both literally and figuratively. Harold felt emboldened. He stepped closer to Jamie, each word layered with intention. "And if I can reclaim my voice today, so can you." Both officers shifted, the initial smugness faltering in the face of this new narrative. The stakes felt higher, the energy around them charged with a palpable tension. Then, as if to punctuate the moment, one officer blurted out, "So why bother then? You think your words mean something?" Harold's heart raced, both from the challenge and a sudden realization. Words mean everything. They carry weight, and if I have to say something to be heard, then every single syllable counts. His mind flashed back to courtrooms filled with the shuffling of paper, the nervous anticipation before a verdict, the soaring passion in those vital moments. He could still hear the echoes of his arguments, the justifications for the men and women whose lives had hung in the balance of his persuasions. This was not so different, and he was still that man. A silence fell, broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves above. Jamie stepped closer, her presence firming up his resolve. She looked up at him, awaiting an explanation that was more than just a defense. "I worry about what's left of me, Jamie," he admitted quietly, eyes softening. "But I won't let that fear govern me, not today. Today I step forward. Today I teach." The officers exchanged glances again, uncertainty causing their rigid postures to soften. But just as hope began to flutter in Harold's chest, the sharp sound of a police radio crackled to life. "Unit 3, we've got reports of a disturbance on Elm Street. Additional units have been dispatched." Over. Each officer wore a mixture of hesitance and frustration. Their attention divided. The moment threatened to dissipate into conformity once again. Harold inhaled, feeling the weight of possibility pressing down on him. Could this be the spark of a much larger confrontation? Jamie squeezed his hand, grounding him as she whispered, "What now, Dad?" He looked to the officers, a steady breath fueling his next words. "I won't back down. This is far from over." And as the air thickened with potential, Harold's mind raced. Could his small stand today lead to something bigger? An awakening not just for himself but for Jamie, and maybe even for the officers before him? The suspense of uncertainty wrapped around them, and Harold knew the real battle was just beginning. What would the next move be in this unexpected game of power, and how far was he willing to push? The tension lingered, thick and urgent, waiting for the next act to unfold. As the radio squawked, the urgency in the air transformed into palpable tension. Harold felt a knot of determination tighten in his stomach. His earlier fears were slowly being eclipsed by a resolve that felt electric, charging him with a purpose he thought he had lost forever. The younger officer shifted his weight, glancing back at his partner, uncertainty etching deeper lines on his forehead. Using their ambivalence to his advantage, Harold took a step closer, letting his voice carry the authority born from years of legal battles and social injustices. "You hear that? There's a disturbance, and here you are questioning me about painting a fence." His eyes locked on the officers, unwavering. "This is about more than just paint. It's about respect. It's about what happens when we stop listening." Jamie stood beside him, a small flame of defiance reflecting in her young eyes. Her father recognized that this was her moment too, a lesson steeped in authenticity. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers, grounding both their realities as he prepared to dive deeper into his narrative. "Have you ever stood up for something that mattered?" he continued, allowing the question to hang in the air. "Or is it easier to enforce what you've been told, to put on a uniform that demands compliance from those you think you control. His words unfurled slowly, each syllable carefully considered, aiming to cast doubt on their perceived authority. The older officer's jaw set tighter, defensiveness creeping into his posture. "You don't know anything about our lives," he replied, almost spitting the words. Harold felt the momentum shift. "And you don't know anything about mine. Beyond this yard, I've faced systems that tried to silence those who felt powerless. I've defended those whom society swept aside." His voice rose, fueled by a blend of indignation and conviction. "So don't you dare assume my reality. Don't reduce my fight to a mere sideshow." He paused, sensing the cadence of the moment change, the electric potential shifting in their dynamic. Haltingly, the younger officer took a small step closer. "So what? You think talking will change anything?" "Yes," Harold responded, feeling the warmth of conviction spread through him. "Words can illuminate the darkest corners. They can transform doubt into hope, ignorance into understanding. Perhaps you can reflect upon that too, instead of viewing it as a mere challenge to your authority." The officers remained silent, visibly wrestling with inflections of doubt permeating their confidence. Harold seized the opportunity. "We're all capable of learning, even you. Especially you. Each encounter we have shapes our understanding." Jamie's grip tightened around her father's hand, sensing the evolution not just within Harold but among the officers too. There was a shift in energy, a moment suspended in the perfect balance of power. Each heartbeat felt like a step toward reclaiming not just his voice but also his daughter's perception of strength. And just as Harold thought he could push further, another voice broke through, crackling across the radio. "Unit 3, this is command. We need an update on the situation. Over." The officers exchanged a wary glance, their resolve faltering as they were pulled back into their roles. For a brief moment, Harold could almost taste victory. The tightening of the command structure seemed like it could disrupt their reactions and force them to rethink their positions. "Harold, what should we do?" Jamie whispered, her face a mixture of anticipation and worry. He pulled her closer, taking a breath that tasted of hope. "We keep pushing, Jamie. We show the world that this moment matters. Just because the universe shifts doesn't mean we disappear." The air crackled with residual possibilities, the officers wrestling with their purpose while Harold stood firm, resolute. "I refuse to let anyone dictate what is right or wrong, even in a moment like this." And as the officers processed his words, Harold knew that the next leap required not just steely determination, but courage in the face of an impending showdown. What would it take to show them that his fight was about more than paint or property? It was about humanity. As tension tightened like a drawn bow, he sensed that something bigger loomed on the horizon. A confrontation, a reckoning, perhaps even a revelation that would sway not only the officers but also ignite the begrudging respect of the world around them. Harold glanced back at Jamie, her eyes shimmering with anticipation. "Let's talk about why this moment matters," he said, ready for the next round. Would the lessons of the past bolster him into an even greater fight, or would it unravel everything he had fought for? Harold's voice reverberated in the stillness, each word laden with the weight of history and unyielding conviction. "Let's talk about why this moment matters." He looked over at the officers who were shackled by their uniforms, yet now appeared to be grappling with their roles. "What if I told you," he began, his tone steady, "that every moment of silence we accept perpetuates cycles of distrust? You see me as a simple man painting a fence, but I am an advocate for change, a defender of dignity." The older officer's gaze began to waver, uncertainty carving through his hardened exterior. With Jamie beside him, Harold began to see clarity in his purpose beyond self-advocacy. He was not just fighting for respect. He was teaching his daughter what integrity under pressure looked like. This was as much about her learning as it was about confronting authority. "Look at her," he said, gesturing to Jamie. "Do you want to teach her that compliance is more important than justice? That our voices matter less when faced with so-called authority? No, it's time for bravery, to reassess priorities." The younger officer, slightly swayed by Harold's emphatic yet calm demeanor, loosened his grip on the radio. It was a simple yet profound sign that he was listening. Harold's heart raced. Small victories felt monumental in this high-stakes confrontation. "What do you want from us?" the older officer finally asked, though his tone had softened, the defensiveness cracking under the pressure of genuine inquiry. "What I want is simple," Harold replied, seizing the moment like a seasoned litigator with a verdict within reach. "I want you to see me, not just as the man who mends the fence, but as someone who reinforces the foundation of this community. Recognize the strength that comes from understanding, rather than just enforcing." Jamie squeezed her father's hand tighter as she watched the transformation unfold. There was a flicker of recognition in the officer's eyes ignited by his passionate words. Perhaps, Harold mused, people were more defined by the resonance of their purpose than the attire they wore. But beneath the surface, doubt lingered like a shadow. Could this shift in perception lead to a lasting change? Or were they merely trapped in the throes of confusion? Harold was well aware of the stakes. Any misstep now could annihilate both their progress and the chance to teach Jamie the values he held dear. "Harold, it's good to stand up for what's right." The younger officer hesitated. "But what about the consequences? What if they push back harder? Then we stand harder," Harold replied, his voice solid as stone. "Sometimes standing up is a risk worth taking. If this moment ends in a struggle, so be it. But my struggle will become a lesson, and that is what truly matters." Suddenly the radio crackled again. "Unit 3, report. What's going on out there?" The authoritative voice from command sliced through their burgeoning harmony, shrouding them in uncertainty once more. Tension spiraled thicker as Harold faced the officers. "You control the narrative," he challenged. "This is your chance to redefine your roles, to act not just as enforcers, but as allies." He could see uncertainty gaining ground in their eyes, while Jamie's anticipation sang in the air. A momentary stillness captured everyone as the weight of his ultimatum sunk deep. A profound silence settled, pregnant with potential outcomes. Every heartbeat echoed the urgency of their choices now, drawing nearer to the pinnacle of decisive confrontation. Harold could almost feel the tremors of change rippling through their world. "Will you step forward?" he pressed, feeling the heavy stakes interwoven with hope. "Or will you remain confined to a system that may or may not represent justice?" As the officers exchanged glances reflecting fierce internal battles, Harold knew that they stood at a crossroads, right on the edge of an awakening and an impending backlash. A challenge hung in the air, a moment laden with promises and uncertainties that could redefine their interactions forever. The question lingered. Would the officers embrace the call for an evolved purpose, or would the moment dissolve into the rigidity of expectations? Just as he was about to push harder, Harold sensed a shiver in the air, whispering to him that a storm was brewing. A storm that could either sweep them into the light of transformation or bury them in the shadows of unresolved conflicts. "Are you ready to choose?" He posed one last time, poised on the brink of a decision that could change everything. The crackling radio filled the air, a stark reminder that time was slipping away. Harold could feel the urgency pulse through him, a partner to his mounting anxiety. The officers stood at what felt like a precipice, their eyes darting between each other, weighing the choices laid before them. With every passing second, the gravity of their decision crystallized. They could either forge a new path of understanding or retreat into the familiar shadows of authority. As he surveyed their faces, Harold recognized a reflection of his own struggles. The conflicts waged within him, the quiet battles of conscience raging just beneath the surface. The younger officer, who had momentarily let go of his radio, was clearly wrestling with the pressure of his uniform. It was a painful realization. Harold saw a younger version of himself, lacking the confidence to disrupt the status quo, yet yearning for something greater. "Look," Harold said, his voice calm yet resolute. "This isn't just about today, it's about tomorrow. About the days your children will live in because of the choices you make right now. This is a defining moment." The older officer's brow furrowed as he shifted, the vulnerability Harold had seen flickering again, battling against the ingrained discipline of years in uniform. "You talk of bravery," he said slowly, almost to himself. "But bravery comes with risk. especially in our line of work. What does standing up mean for us if it costs us our jobs, our reputations? The question hung heavy, sticky in the air. Harold could not falter now. The risk of losing your job means nothing, he countered fiercely. If your principles hinge on that very job, you have already lost the battle. If you sacrifice your integrity, what will remain for you to protect? What legacy do you truly want to leave? With that, Jamie's small hand squeezed his tighter. Her innocent yet powerful faith radiated warmth against the cold uncertainty surrounding them. Seeing her in that moment was a lifeline for Harold, fueling the resolve that had spurred him forward in the first place. He was not just fighting for familial respect, he was igniting a spark of awareness within these officers that could flicker beyond the scope of their uniforms. He felt the crack of change, a line drawn not just in the shifting sands of authority, but within the very essence of what it meant to serve. But doubt lingered. Had he pushed too far? Had he asked too much from people trapped by their own codes? The radio crackled again and anxiety ricocheted in his chest. Unit 3, respond. What's the status? You need to report. Focus on us, not the radio, Harold urged. We're in a defining moment, one that will set a new precedent, not just for our interaction, but for how we treat each other as human beings. We cannot let ourselves be governed by fear. The hesitancy in the officers' faces began to morph into contemplation. They looked at each other, masks of authority slipping as the reality of Harold's words settled like the dust around them. Is standing together worth the potential fallout? The younger officer finally asked, his voice trembling. Are we truly ready to challenge what we've always known? Yes, Harold asserted, feeling an electric charge cascade through him. Change begins with the choice to act differently than expected. Your unresolved struggle can become a conduit for growth. Don't box yourselves in with doubts. Rise above them, in that transformative silence as if the universe paused to watch. Fragile hope blossomed. Jamie, catching her father's eye, smiled, igniting a warmth that coursed through Harold. Maybe, just maybe, they were stepping slowly toward a collective awakening. Then a surge of adrenaline shot through him at the realization that their moment of truth was not just about him anymore. It was about these officers, about their will to act when faced with an unspeakable challenge from their very institution. As eyes turned back to Harold, he clenched his fists, understanding the stakes mounted higher than just civil discourse. He saw the storm brewing not just outside but within these men, a clash of principles waiting to break free. Now, he pressed. Do you choose to emerge as better men, or do you let fear dictate your lives? The choice could redefine everything. The tension in the air thickened as they stood on the cusp of revelation. Harold felt the collective breath of the moment come crashing down around them, crackling with the energy of its monumental potential. Before he could process their reactions, the radio blared to life again. Unit 3, we're sending backup. You need to respond now. Harold's resolve hardened. The storm of uncertainty raged between pushing further against the tide of control or finding a way to balance their impending choices. Would they choose solidarity or retreat? The future of their community teetered on the brink, and he could only hope that together they would face whatever came next. Every heartbeat felt like a ticking clock, echoing the urgency swelling in Harold's chest. The radio buzzed again, jolting him from his contemplation. Each officer's expression oscillated between concern and determination, reflecting the internal struggle that Harold knew all too well. The stakes were impossibly high, and he could sense the weight of their future resting on this single moment. Step forward, he urged, breaking the unbearable silence. Lead with your values, not your fears. What will you tell your children when they ask about this day? Will you regale them with tales of cowardice or stories of courage? The older officer, burdened by years of adherence to tradition, shifted his gaze to the ground, grappling with Harold's challenge. But within this unease, Harold detected a glimmer of hope. Maybe the broader implications of their choices were beginning to penetrate the walls he'd seen erected over the years. Please, Harold continued, sensing the critical window for influence. This isn't just about your pride or professional duty. It's about your humanity. Take a stand and let that stand for something larger than yourselves. For once, be the future you wish to see. The young officer stepped forward, vulnerability replacing fear in his demeanor. What if we fail? What if trying to be different backfires? His voice quivered, exposing a raw honesty that resonated deeply within Harold. This isn't failure, he replied, instinctively reaching for the truth embedded in that questioning tone. It's learning. It's part of growth. Every misstep teaches us a lesson. It's stepping outside your comfort zone that reveals your true potential. The young officer took a breath, emboldened by that acknowledgement. For Harold, it felt like witnessing the first flicker of a flame in the darkness. If they could translate this tentative courage into action, it could reshape entire narratives, both personally inside their uniforms and externally within their community. What if we're branded as traitors? Another officer asked, his voice rising with apprehension. This is our livelihood. Your livelihood is built on trust. Trust that you protect the people you serve. If you allow fear to govern your actions, you don't just endanger yourselves. You jeopardize everything that gives your uniforms meaning. Harold countered, his voice unwavering. Honor requires risk, integrity demands it. An electric tension charged the air as the officers weighed his words. The radio crackled again, desperation creeping into the static-laden voice demanding a status report. Each blast felt like a call to snap back into expected roles, yet as Harold looked around, he sensed a shift. Jamie's quiet confidence, her small, resolute hand in his, anchored him. In that moment, she symbolized hope and the promise of change, reminding him why he had persisted in this gamble. He squeezed her hand tighter, subconsciously drawing strength from her unwavering faith. The officers glanced at one another, and for the first time, uncertainty morphed into collective contemplation. Each could feel the electricity of camaraderie emerging. The venomous fears that had long isolated them seemed to crack under the weight of potential. Are you ready to stand up? Harold prompted, his voice steady with conviction. Real strength lies not just in authority but in action, in taking risks for a greater good. As he finished, their gazes met his, a collective understanding igniting in the space between them. Let's do it, the younger officer declared, a wave of sudden resolve crashing over him. Let's take a stand together. The murmurs of agreement filtered through the air, transforming into a roar. Of uncertainty, yes, but more importantly, of resolve and purpose. The weight of their decision had effectively reshaped their trajectory, and Harold felt his heart race in alignment with theirs. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering the energy that pulsed through their ranks. Change was imminent, a powerful force waiting to be unleashed. As Jamie's grip tightened one last time, a wave of exhilaration and fear surged through Harold, a reminder that true commitment often veered into uncharted waters. Let's send a message that echoes beyond our precinct, Harold exclaimed, realizing the depth of the transformation he had witnessed today. Leadership wasn't merely executing orders, it was inspiring action that could redefine societal expectations. Now, as the radio crackled once more, this time it was more than just background noise. It was a harbinger of both possibility and consequence. What's next, he thought, anticipating the challenges yet to come. They would have to face their institution, their colleagues, and perhaps even their deepest fears. And as if on cue, the radio blared, ushering in their first test. Unit 3 backup is en route. Prepare for intense pressure at your location. With hearts pounding, the officers fixed their gaze on Harold, awaiting instruction. Everything that had led them to this moment was now a mere prelude to the unfolding chaos. Would they navigate these waters together, or would they scatter like leaves in a storm? The air thickened with tension as the radio's urgent call resonated in the confined space. Harold could feel the gravity of the moment pulling at him, heightening his awareness of the officers around him. Their eyes were locked onto him, each gaze a reflection of a shared journey, of the fragile line they were treading between the status quo and the promise of transformation. All right, everyone, listen closely, he said, his voice steady but resolute as he assessed the group's collective emotional state. He understood that this moment would define not only their careers, but their identities. We need to mobilize strategically. This isn't just about following orders, this is about leading with integrity. We are about to make a statement. How we handle this will resonate far beyond today. They each nodded, and Harold observed flashes of determination ignite within their expressions. Yet beneath the resolve, he sensed an undercurrent of doubt that needed to be acknowledged. I know many of you are worried about the backlash we might face. I can't promise it won't be hard. But incredibly, the hardest paths often yield the most rewarding outcomes. He took a moment to collect his thoughts, grounding himself in the depth of what they were undertaking. The repercussions could lead to ostracism by their peers, or worse, condemnation from the institution they had vowed to protect. But in that instant, uncertainty was blotted out by something stronger, a vision of what justice could look like. Let's remember why we're here, he continued, a steadiness emerging in his tone. We have each taken an oath to protect and serve. But what does that mean when it conflicts with what is right? Today we have the chance to redefine that. This is about the people we will go home to, about the children growing up in an atmosphere of fear or empowerment. Harold's words hung in the air, each officer processing the weight of his declaration. They were not merely characters in a script, executing dictated actions. They were the authors of their own narrative, risking the familiar for something profoundly greater. As the digital clock continued to tick down, he could feel the backdrop of chaos inching closer. Move out in pairs, watch each other's backs. Remember, we're stronger together, and ensure your communications remain clear and open. We need to adapt as the situation evolves. They retrieved their gear and suited up with a newfound sense of purpose. The earlier fears now morphed into commitment. For many, it was the first step into a realm they had hesitated to explore. Vulnerability shared with camaraderie. Each pair exchanged nods, a silent pact of support echoing throughout the moment. Jamie, Harold said, as she readied herself beside him, stay close. We'll navigate this together, always, she replied, a warmth igniting in her eyes. In that exchange, he found reassurance. She embodied a belief in the change they sought. The trust they had established now felt like an unbreakable bond. As they moved out, the sounds of their footfalls resonated like a heartbeat, pulsing with intent. They approached the scene, where the escalating crisis unfolded like a volatile spring ready to snap. Thinking strategically kept Harold focused. Clarity emerged from potential chaos, and he began crafting an action plan in his mind, evaluating every possible angle of their approach. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the radio again, laden with urgency. Unit 3, be advised, tensions are escalating. Suspects are heavily armed. The sweat on Harold's forehead mingled with the gravity of the words. He felt the electrifying pulse of anxiety curling in his gut. The very situation they had prepared for was now aligned with the gravity of his intent, a moment that would ultimately determine their values. He needed to execute, not just to react, but to redefine what response would mean. Hold steady, he said into the radio, his voice calm despite the rising stakes. We'll adjust according to the evolving narrative. Remember, it's not just about how we act. It's about how we inspire with our actions. As they moved closer to what was rapidly becoming untenable, Harold's heart raced. He questioned if he was ready for what lay ahead. In pursuit of transformative leadership, had he underestimated the force of resistance they might encounter from their own ranks? And in that moment, as the first protesters' voices rose into the air around them, Harold realized that a deeper reckoning loomed just beyond. To embrace what they truly stood for, he might have to confront not only the escalating chaos, but also the fracturing ties with his own profession. Now it's time to decide what kind of legacy we want to leave, he thought, stepping into the unfolding uncertainty ahead, fully aware that this would be a make-or-break moment. Would they rise together, or would they falter in the face of true challenge? As they approached the chaotic scene that loomed ahead, Harold pulled in a deep breath, attempting to steady his racing heart. The cacophony of voices swelled, growing louder with each step, a relentless tide of anger and discontent. This was no longer just an operation. It was a crucible for their values, a test that demanded more than tactical readiness. A frisson of doubt fluttered in his chest. Was his vision of change naively optimistic, or was it a necessary reckoning? He quickly scanned the crowd, a sea of faces marred by frustration. They weren't faceless adversaries. They were individuals with stories, struggles, and hopes, all converging on this moment. Every chant echoed along the streets, a reminder of the very grievances that had propelled them here. Harold felt the weight of his role as he moved his men into position. It was not simply law enforcement they needed to enact. It was the promise of justice. "Settle in. Maintain your focus," he commanded, envisioning this as a unified front. He could practically hear the internal struggles among his officers, their instincts battling against the ideals they had long upheld. But real change came at a cost. It demanded an act of courage that he hoped they were ready to embrace. He felt Jamie's presence beside him, a grounding force amidst the chaos. She was the first to speak, a confident reminder of their shared purpose. "We can't forget why we're here. If we falter, we risk losing sight of the people who depend on us to listen, not just act." Her words gripped Harold. She was suggesting a deeper commitment to their oath, urging him to confront the haunting possibility that their actions might lead to either reconciliation or further division. He shifted his focus back to the situation at hand, mentally formulating strategies while grappling with the anticipation of conflict. "We address their concerns, create an opening for dialogue," he whispered, as much to himself as to her. Time stretched in that charged atmosphere, filled with audible breaths and exchanged glances. Some officers appeared steadfast, while others bore the marks of trepidation. Harold recognized the tension thrumming in the air, mirroring his own struggle with self-doubt. This was not just an assignment but a pivotal moment in his career, one that could redefine everything he and his officers ever stood for. "Remember, we came here to be the change," he reiterated, emphasizing their role as leaders rather than enforcers. They had to build trust, not fear. The stakes were alarmingly high, and one wrong move could spiral into chaos. He knew that maintaining control meant not only managing the crowd but also balancing the emotions within his team. As the first stone struck the ground near them, the escalation around them became alarmingly visceral. The collective gasp from his officers was a palpable reminder of the conflict that lay ahead. Harold's pulse quickened, and he fought against the instinct to react defensively. "Every single one of you has an important role," he stated again, conviction surging in his voice. "We choose how to respond. Let's avoid confrontation. We're here to listen and engage." The adrenaline coursed through him, a rallying call to maintain their composure. "Sir," a young officer whispered, eyes wide, "what if they turn violent?" He locked his gaze on the crowd, their faces filled with raw emotion, vulnerability mixed with resolve. "Then we stand firm, but we remain unyielding to anger. It's about choice." Every word felt like a promise, a commitment to not just their duty but to what it meant to be unequivocally human. The enormity of the moment washed over him. He understood that this was not merely an operational maneuver, but a declaration of who they wished to be in the eyes of the world. With a sudden rise in the tension, another shout rang out, cutting through the air like a blade. There came a moment of silence, as if the world paused. Was this where it would fracture? Was he ready to face not only the anger of the crowd, but the apprehension of his own officers? And as he prepared to step forward, he realized the unmistakable truth. Confronting the chaos outside was only the beginning. He would face the reckoning within his own heart, as the culmination of choices made and paths taken converged in an inevitable crossing on an unknown horizon. "Hold your ground," Harold declared, feeling the weight of his own words as the moment unraveled around him. Would he have the strength to lead without losing himself in the process? Would they emerge united or break under the pressure of their own expectations? The questions rippled in his mind, echoing uncertainties that only deepened as the looming storm approached. In the swirling chaos of the crowd, Harold stood tall, his heart pounding with the realization that he was on the cusp of something monumental. This moment was not just for him. It was for every person out there who felt powerless. every voice silenced by fear and circumstance. The weight of his past battles flooded back, igniting a fire within him, compelling him to transform this chaos into a powerful opportunity for change. "Listen!" he shouted, and his voice cut through the din like a sharp blade. "We're not here to fight. We're here to understand and advocate." The words came from deep within, resonating with every encounter he had faced throughout his career. Unexpectedly, the crowd began to quiet down, their wild eyes shifting to focus on him. Harold felt the visible tension in the air and welcomed it as a challenge. This was his moment to reclaim not only his identity, but to demonstrate what true advocacy meant to his daughter and the officers at his side. "Many of you may see us as adversaries," he continued, projecting strength. "But we share the same community. We have the power to change the narrative together. Let's stand for each other rather than against one another. We can listen, uphold dignity, and find common ground." In the depths of his speech, he perceived the flickers of recognition in the crowd, questioning faces morphing from hostility to curiosity. Was this the change he had sought all along, not just through laws and protections, but through understanding? The younger officer beside him leaned in, clearly moved by Harold's conviction. "Sir," he whispered. "They're listening." "Good," Harold replied, emboldened. This was more than a confrontation, it was a collective awakening. He locked eyes with Jamie, lending strength to his resolve. They needed to see a different side of authority, to realize that the uniform represented not domination but commitment to public service. Guardian, not jailer. The crowd shifted uncomfortably as Harold's words took root. They were hungry for change, and he felt inspired to channel that eagerness regarding justice, all while simultaneously redeeming his estranged relationship with Jamie. Then came the sirens, a cacophony of reinforcements, men and women in uniform arriving with the typical structures of law enforcement. Instead of dread, he approached this with an opportunity. "No matter what, we need to show unity. Let's not escalate. Let's build connections," he prompted all around him. Stringing together courage and compassion, Harold outlined a framework for engagement. Rather than react to anger, let's listen to grievances. Serve as a bridge to understanding. Instead of wagging fingers, we should extend hands. The officers nodded. Spirits rekindled. Jamie felt the warmth of possibility radiating through her father's words, and she sensed the transformation unfolding. Could they shift from the rigid perceptions of the past? As momentum built, Harold allowed himself a moment of pride. Earlier in his life, he had wielded power in boardrooms and courtrooms, but now that power was being redefined in a way that would ripple far beyond his individual life. But the fight was not won. As people surged forward, Harold realized that they would have to confront more than words. They would face ingrained prejudices, crafted misconceptions, and societal fears that had echoed through generations. Yet, amid the uncertainty, he would stand resolute, serving as a beacon of hope, not just for himself but for those he aimed to inspire. The officer standing shoulder to shoulder with him and, most importantly, Jamie. "Together," he shouted, raising his hands to gather focus. "Together is how we build this future. Together means addressing injustices and taking responsibility. What happens next defines us, but we can choose to become a voice of reason." The police officers looked to each other, nodding in agreement. Amid feeling overwhelmed, they had changed. Not just in the way they engaged with people, but in how they viewed their roles. They had begun to shed the constraints of fear, poised to embrace the greater mission. A group of officers stepped forward, ready to advocate alongside Harold while inching toward a collaborative approach. And as the crowd simmered down, realizing that Harold's call was genuine, he sensed it, the turning of tides. One by one, voices began to rise in harmony with Harold's, chanting for justice, for understanding, for a united community, a wave of commitment he had only dreamed of. "I was a lawyer," he thought, "and now I'm turning my profession into purpose." With a glimmer of fulfillment, a sense of achievement washed over him. He was reshaping his legacy, not through winning cases or securing settlements, but through transforming lives around him. He had regained his place not just as a figure in the courtroom but as a father who taught his daughter what true advocacy looks like. And just as he turned to Jamie with a newfound confidence, it became evident to him. They had reclaimed their relationship, bridging the years of hurt and misunderstanding. It was about their united stand against not just institutional injustice, but their collective journey toward healing. "Let's make a pact," he whispered to her as the crowd around them erupted in unity. "No matter what, we'll always choose to confront with kindness, rather than confrontation." Jamie smiled, a beacon of hope in her father's eyes. "Together, Dad." As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting a warm glow across the gathered crowd, Harold breathed in deeply, feeling a kinship with everyone present. A sense of genuine accomplishment emerged. Finally, he was home, not just in his yard but in the lives of those around him, actively engaged in a fight larger than he alone could manage. This was his moment of truth, of transformation. No longer invisible, Harold Jennings stepped boldly into the future, solidly reclaiming his identity as an advocate and a father, ready to guide others in their own journeys to stand tall. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. It's time to show your support for these powerful personal overcoming stories.